Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Inside Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan. Dan, as usual, I kind of listen for things that I find intriguing that you say. And one of the things that you said, which I found impressive, was you were talking about your morning exercise routine where you were lifting an incredibly heavy amount of weights. You talked about it being grueling, and then you went ahead and did it anyway. And I was like, okay, I need to know more about this, because my attitude towards things that are grueling is how quickly can I find something else to do? So I wanted to get your take on it because, doing things that are physically hard, you have a reason and a meaning for it. And I thought that might be a really interesting kind of hack that a lot of our clients would be interested in knowing more about. So I'm sure you can set the context and tell the story better than I can, but I'd love to hear your thinking on why it's important to do hard physical things sometimes.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a lifetime thing because I started off, I was a farm boy in the 1940s and 1950s, and there was hard work, where you had to work long and it was demanding physically, so I was used to that. And my mother and father encouraged me, and my older siblings got into sports, and my favorite was football. And, football's a hard sport. It's violent. And not only that, but you have to be strong, and you have to have strong muscles. You have to have strong bones. You have to have strong lungs. You have to have a strong heart. And that requires a lot of very, very hard work. So I got kind of used to it. I was in the military. I've done Outward Bound, but that's a long time behind me. I wasn't involved in any kind of activity that I just mentioned probably after 30 years old. And I'm 77 now. However, I am involved in what we do in coach and everything now that requires a tremendous amount of stamina. At 77, I do far more work, meaningful work, productive work and creative work, than I certainly did 10 years ago, way more than I did 25 years ago. First of all, I love it. And the other thing is I love being dependent upon by my team. Mm-hmm. So when I was 75, and I said, when I'm 75, so I had 3 25-year periods behind me, I said, so I have a goal for age 100. And my goal for age 100 is that on the day that I'm 100 years old, I am just as strong physically as I am on my birthday when I'm 75. So next 25 years, I will maintain my present level of physical fitness and my overall strength. I have a trainer for 25 years. And I said, can I ask you a question? I said, what I just did today, can I do that 25 years from now? And he said, yes. And I said, how do you do it? He says, just do it every day between now and 25 years later. And I said, well, that's easy. And I should say here, I'm really good at habits. I have kind of a unpredictable mind, but if you spend any time with you, you'll notice that Dan just has a lot of things that he does habitually. I have really habitual approaches to my work life and to my personal life. But I've chosen the activities, mm-hmm. and I'm committed to the long-term performance and results that goes along with them. But the physical fitness, and what I've heard from the people who are specializing in technological, medical, scientific breakthroughs as far as fitness and health goes, said that there's only 2 things that you have to do right now in preparation for some really great shortcuts and really great breakthroughs. And that is, you got to keep your muscles real strong, mm-hmm. and you have to keep your cardio real strong. Your muscles really protect you. I mean, muscles, having really, really strong muscles is a solution that creates 10 other solutions. It prevents 10 other problems.
Right.
And the other thing, cardio, just getting a lot of oxygen to your brain. So those are 2 things. And both of those require that you have a really strong heart. Both mm-hmm. strong muscles and strong cardio requires that you have a really strong heart. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of knocking off 3 things. And the only thing that does it is really vigorous exercise and that you keep increasing the intensity. So I'll go along at one level of intensity, and then it'll become normal, and then I raise it. Anytime it becomes normal, then I say, okay, it's time now to increase it. So to give you an example, when I started this, it was 2 years, and we've gone through COVID. And COVID's been a great advantage because I've never had such a regular, predictable part of my life as far as work and personal life, because there's no travel, no travel. So you're going to be in the same place, and, you can regulate the hours. So, I'm talking about 2 years ago when I was 75. I've researched this over the years, and there's one exercise that impacts 8 different major muscle groups, and it's squats. Okay. And I don't mean squats with a barbell on my shoulder. I mean squats where the weight is in each hand. So you're lifting it. And so I started off on my 75th birthday that I could, with effort, it was effort of lifting 40 pounds in each hand, so 80 pounds. Okay, and you also remember with squats, you're also lifting your body weight because you're going down. And I'll just bring you up to date because I've gone through layer after layer over 2 years, and I'm now 65 pounds in each, so I'm up to 130 pounds. Same number. I do 5 sets with 10 reps. So I do 50, and I do this every morning. Now, there's 2 other things that make it harder. There's a device called the Elevation Training Mask, and it's a very inexpensive. It's about $80. Go on Amazon, Elevation Training Mask. They have, fancy ones because they need to sell something else to people who have done the simple ones, but I just use the simple one. It fits over your mouth and your nose, and then it's sort of contained. And then you just have gauges or valves or snap-ons. And you start off with a certain number of holes that allow in a certain amount of air. And then when you first do it, it kind of scares you because you say, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. I could do it for about 5 minutes. Then I got up to a half hour and I could do it. And then you can snap on one with lesser holes and lesser holes and lesser holes and lesser holes. So you start off with 16 little holes, and now I'm down to 3 holes. And I can do an hour. I can do an hour with this, and I'm breathing normally and everything. But my aerobic strength by measuring, they can do this in a gym, is about 40 to 50% greater. My overall ability to take in oxygen in my lungs and do it regularly, that's been the improvement, measurable improvement over 2 years. But the other thing is that I'm doing very, very vigorous exercise with restricted airflow. In 2 years, I've probably gone through 12 growth stages, And the other thing, about 3 months ago, I was handling the squat weights okay. I was at 65 in each. Those are heavy weights. I mean, those are heavy weights. So I added a 30-pound weight vest to it. So I'm actually lifting, 160 pounds, And down the road, I don't have it as a goal, but I know just from the history of how I've gone to higher levels, I'm going to hit my body weight. So, there's going to be a morning when I do 50 squats and I will have lifted my own body weight. But, I don't push it. I let my body tell me, when it's time to challenge it a little bit more. And the other thing is, it's something that I'm going to do for 25 years. So that puts my mind at rest, okay? In addition to that, I do sprints on the elliptical machine, and what a lot of people don't realize is that aerobics, I don't do running because I've got a missing cartilage in my left knee. Running, it's bone on bone, and I can't do that. But elliptical is great. It doesn't hurt me. So I'm wearing a 30-pound weight vest. I'm wearing the Elevation, and I'll do all-out 60-second sprint. And I have others where I do 20 seconds and then regular speed for a minute and a half. So one of the big things is that when you're committed to doing a habit for a long point of time, You have to be an entertainment director for yourself to give you. And I'll mix up the exercise, I'll mix up the routine. And then I have other hand weights like curls, which I do mostly for variety, not necessarily. But squats are just the greatest. And I'll tell you the reason why they're the greatest is that they get your whole lower legs, they get your whole upper legs, they get your abdominal muscles, they get your back muscles, it gets your chest muscles, it gets your upper arm muscles. And the other thing is your grip. I mean, your grip becomes so strong. So I was at a advanced scientific technological conference for longevity and age reversal. And a guy was there who was one of the physical trainers for the Pittsburgh Steelers football club. And he was really pumped. You know, he introduced himself and he said, you know, for the last 16 years, I've worked with the Pittsburgh Steelers and, you know, and everything. And, you know, he's working with really super athletes and everything else, but really you could tell he was really strong. So he introduced himself and I walked over to him and I said, hi, my name's Dan, lifetime Cleveland Browns fan. He said, oh, and he put out his hand and, you know, he started pressing. And there was a certain point where he said, whoa, 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 whoa. And I could have, and it's just because you know, you have to really have great grip. As the weights get bigger, you know, it's only your hands that are doing it. Now, here's the thing about this, Shannon. This is what I do, and I don't recommend it to anybody. You know, I mean, because I think when it comes to almost everything related to fitness and health, it's all personal, it's all custom design. And the other thing is I have a context for this, which is on my 100th birthday, I can perform as well as I could on my 75th birthday. So I'm not doing it to be super fit. I'm not doing it to be strong. But my sense is that this is a routine that really, really supports my productivity goals, my creativity goals, and, you know, the fact that I can put in the hours, take on the activities, and be totally dependable to everybody. You don't have to worry about Dan. Dan will show up and Dan will perform. So I think that we make a mistake about physical exercise because we make it into a goal. It's not a goal for me. It's a means.
That's a very interesting way to think about it, Dan. It's a means so that you can fulfill your goals and do all the things you want to do and be who you want to be and show up for your team that you want to show up. That is a profound way to think about it. It allows you, even when you know something's going to be grueling, you're like, okay, but that's okay because it serves a bigger purpose for you. Yeah. Well, and as someone who works with you and is on long-term projects with you, I'm really happy you're doing that. And I need to up my game. I want to be in the gym beside Dan working out at a hotel because he will outrun you, which is pretty fun.
Yeah. And Shannon, you have enormous energy and you have enormous physical strength. And I said it isn't a concern until it's a concern.
True.
Yeah. So I don't tell people when you have to do this, but first of all, at 75, I was a great performer. So for the most part, you know, I was above average, you know, as entrepreneurs. But, you know, 75 is just base camp, you know, for what I have planned for the next year. And, you know, I'm going to require an upping of the game for my physical strength. You know, all the tests that I do, you know, they test heart strength, they test muscle, they test, and I'm off the charts. You know, people are so amazed. I can still see the look in this guy from the Pittsburgh Steelers. One is I was from these are two terrible enemies in sports. You know, these are the Steelers and the Browns, you know, and then he found out I was 77, he's like 45 or something. And he thought, you know, I was going to say uncle and everything. And then I just started applying the pressure, you know. One is he wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's one of those little wins that, you know,
there are some fun byproducts as a result of being stronger than people anticipate. Well, I really appreciate this conversation, Dan, because I find it personally inspiring. I know a lot of our clients do too, but the mindset you have around it is the most important thing. Everyone will need to customize it for themselves, but really focusing on this being the means to your end, I think is a great takeaway from this. So thank you.
One thing people say, well, how long does that take you? And I said, you know, if I do all 5 sets and I do stair climbing with the weight vest, I said, It's about an hour, about 60 minutes. And they said, 60 minutes? Where do you find the time? And I said, well, you make whatever time's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's the wrong question. Where do you find the time? You'd never find the time. The activity demands the time. So you rearrange your other schedule to accommodate that. They said, what's your reading? You're doing this, with restricted breathing and your heart rate. And I said, some days, I'll do an hour and the average heart rate's 145, 150. And they said, how do you do that? I said, my heart's used to it.
I love it. Again, I just find it fascinating. And I'm glad you're doing that because I want to be hanging out with you for a long time, Dan.
Yeah. I don't want to be a topic of discussion.
That's a really great point. Yeah. Only for the other things do you want to be a topic for discussion.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan. I really appreciate your outlining what you do, your weights and your routine, because that's what works for you, but also how you think about it is incredibly useful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shannon.